was there for, they never tested it. They never tested a recovery. A backup is only half of a backup. A recovery is the other half of a backup. Just do it once, please. Didn't do it, okay? This was a community that was 100% user-generated content, okay? In other words, it was, to a mindset that is not contemporary, some of the most precious data you can find online. You know, we are very careful when we take organs out of people. We have a whole thing of getting that organ to where it needs to go for transplant. We have a whole variety of systems. We even have echoes of it in ambulances, the fact that any single person knows that when they hear an ambulance, they should get the fuck out of the way because something important is happening. Enough that we prosecute people who use ambulance noises when they're not supposed to. Like, this is something we all know. But to him, this user data was not important enough to check on backups and not do it for years and yet still benefit financially from it. He put up a podcast in its place where he was interviewed by somebody, a strange situation, where he said, mea culpa, mea culpa. But one of the things he said made me want to invent a more sensitive nutsack to punch him in. What he said was, you have to understand, we started this back in 2002, and people weren't really as people did not consider backups as critical back then, and we didn't have as much knowledge about backups as we do now. And so we were unable, at that time, we were focused so much on providing such a great site that we weren't able to back up. But now, in today's world, we would know to back up. See, backups, the process of putting information on temporary storage devices that may or may not fail and coming up with contingencies for that failure and preventing data from being lost is an art that we have been doing for well over half of a century. We have been doing it for a long time, okay? So Larry Half is a fuck because he tried to apply for ignorance, but he's also an indicator of contemporary thought about this data. Similarly, there was a place called MetaPlace. MetaPlace was a Second Life wannabe run by Ralph Koster, who had been renowned as a games theoretician, who said, I'm going to create an open space where you can both create games and have environments, and I'm going to put together this thing, and we're going to have a player's Bill of Rights. And it was a lot of stuff that he had been talking about as a theory guy for years. So it went up one year, 2008, and it was around, and people tried it, and some liked it, some didn't, but it allowed you to upload all of your own works, allowed you to generate code, allowed you to do things. So on December 21st, 2009, he announced it was all going away in 9 days. What you're seeing here is his what's going to happen to my world and what's going to happen. Well, this says what's happening to my world. The answer is it's going away. How do I save my art objects? Painfully through a process of screen grabbing them. How do I save my scripts? Through a painful process of copy and paste. So I wrote an entry about them called Metafuckers. Called him out by name, called his community manager out by name, because I was like, you do not deserve to be anyone's community manager anymore. Because even if you think of a community manager as merely the PR mouth for an organization interacting with the human beings, there is, at least in some theory, some amount of ombudsman there that one could argue you might have, that you too would know your community probably doesn't want it in 9 days. Now, it was December 21st, and I said that they were shutting it down over Christmas. And I said, who wants, there was no button to say, export to zip. Why? Because contemporary thought says you don't need it. And why did they think 9 days was fine? Because 9 days is what contemporary thought said, who cares? 9 days, 30 days, 60 days, whatever you can do, hero. So just to be clear again, Ralph Koster is a fuck. There's his smiling face. And he was not, I wouldn't say, how do I say it? His response was the kind of gritted teeth, typed with 2 fingers response that I would have hoped, which was, Jason, we don't seem to see eye to eye on this, and I understand that. And I'm sure the fact that I was just calling him this terrible thing. What I liked was his community manager said, it's not over Christmas. It's 9 days. You know, to her it was like 21st, not the 25th. Great, awesome. That's just beautiful. So I want to take one little side thing to mention something about zealotry and causes. Okay, what you're hearing from me is that bombastic, gritted mouth sound verse of somebody who's on a cause, who has some sort of zeal for something, and it's one of the most off-putting, boring things you can deal with if it's not something you're interested in. If you're not as pissed off about vegetable farming as somebody else is, or if you don't agree that motorcycles should have more of the road, or you don't like the lack of bike lanes or something else, and this person is just frothing at the mouth about it, I understand. And I've never tried to indicate that it's bad of people to not agree with where I'm going with this and why it suddenly took such an interest in me. When we started up Archive Team, one of the things we said was, let's just be crazy, and we started to put up something called the Death Watch. And we just started going after all these places and saying, this place, they haven't updated any of their data in a year, they're going to probably die. This group over here, I don't know what you're thinking, they did this. Okay, they just went down, we were going to put them up. We would take a screen grab of them shutting down because we knew they would delete it, and their parent company would act like that thing never existed. A good example of that, for instance, is Google Catalogs, which there's no record of there ever having been a Google Catalogs. Google's shared meta place thing, which was called Lively. When I've given interviews about what Archive Team is up to, I talk about Google Lively again as one of these contemporary Larry Half is a fuck kind of things, because what happened was Google Lively said, yeah, we're taking this thing down. You have a couple weeks. Please go and take as many screenshots of what you created as you need. And I said that was equivalent to, we are going to burn down your house in 2 weeks, but you can go through all the windows and take as many photographs of your stuff before it goes down. All right? But the thing is this is all acceptable behavior. And why is it all acceptable behavior? Because that's kind of where we've gone with it. It used to be a miracle that we could store data at all. The fact is, and I'm not making this thing up out of my head, there was a study or a demonstration that showed that the way that a hard drive works is like the hard drive head going over the density of data we have now is the equivalent of a 747 able to go Mach 2, stop on a dime, and read what is written on blades of grass. You know, that is where we've gotten. That's a miracle. That is awesome. And it's awesome that we can store so much data. And it was so cool when we had websites in the early 90s, the fact that you could just hook it up, and through a wide variety of machinations and a lot of personal pain, we could set up websites that allowed people to come in and read our data in full color, a concept which was really unto forward. One of the things I say is that some people would put up websites, and they would have the largest audience of anybody in their genetic line, right? You'd have somebody put up a website, and if it got read by 5,000 or 10,000 people, that might be more than anything written by anyone who was ever related to them. It was an unbelievable thing that we did this, that just the way it happened, it was just great. The amount of people that it opened up the world to. And did they make shitty sites? Yes, they did, but it was their first site. What do you do? How's your first written story when you get to put it up? Not so great. It's usually about you in your room, and you win. But you had these locations that came up in the 90s that suddenly were these miraculous things. Well, they've been around for about 20 years. One of them is Yahoo GeoCities, previously known as GeoCities, previously known as GeoPages, previously known as Beverly Hills Internet, which was a big, huge site that had been purchased by Yahoo for the unbelievable number of $3.6 billion in 1999, and was, at the time that it was purchased, the third most browsed site on the internet. It was a really big deal that it was purchased by Yahoo. But Yahoo announced they were closing it. Now, the way they announced it was also unbelievably shitty. Buried in one of their tech support documents was something saying, by the way, we're closing. And a bunch of us started to make noise about, like, dude, they're closing. Why are they closing? And then suddenly, a few months later, they officially put up a thing going, by the way, we're closing. We're going to close in a few months, and we're going to go down, and thank you. You have the option of